Let's see if this comes on. Ready to get started here. All right, so this week's Torah portion, and again, I apologize for on the Shabbat, I did not tell you what was next. So a lot of us probably didn't know what the Torah portion was going to be for this week. So I do want to apologize for not bringing that out to us from just a few days ago. It's like I kind of failed us there again. I'll be getting caught up so much in the teaching, I'll be forgetting stuff. And I don't do it on purpose. It's just what it happens sometimes. You guys know how it is. And I thought to myself, what if Dr. Yared did this at his conference? What would they have said? Right. So I want to again apologize to you all for not, bringing out what was supposed to be for this week. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and, for those of you who didn't know, I do want to show you what it is supposed to be right quick. So you can be on target. You won't miss out on what you're supposed to be reading. Here it was this in particular called What's Next. And what's next is, Deuteronomy chapter number 16. Verses 16, 18 through 21 through 9. And then the Haftarah, which is the book of Isaiah, chapter number 51, verses number 12 to chapter 52, verse number 12. So 51, 12 to 52, 12. Our Torah portion is called Shafatim, okay, which they call Shaftim. And Shaftim is dealing with the judges, okay. It's dealing with judges, it's dealing with officers, it's dealing with how things are supposed to be within what they call your sha'areka, which are your gates. I wanted to point something out to you. I don't know if you can see my screen, but I think it's important for us to understand the Torah from its original perspective. Now, I know that they chopped the Torah down and have this called the Shaftim. Shaftim is the first word that's in this verse number 18, right here. Pull it right here for you. And here we go, right here. Shaftim, okay? So generally, Torah portions are divided according to what they want to discuss, and then that's going to be your theme for this in particular Torah portion and for this in particular week. But there was something interesting that I found in it that I wanted to bring out to you, and that was this, is that even though this Torah portion is starting off in verse number 18 of chapter number 16, I don't know if you recall, but I told you that the Torah is divided into what they would call divisions, okay? And what's in she said let her in. I did let her in. Let's see, is she in here? Yeah. Someone's trying to get in. Okay, now I could tell her yes. Let's see. Forgive me. Let me see. There she go. All right, here she wants to get in. Okay. All right. So in the Torah, in the scrolls, I want you to know that there's these divisions, and these divisions are spelled out with these letters, like this one right here. That's a samak. Okay, that's the letter S in Hebrew. Okay, called the samak. Okay, a samak. Okay, sometimes they spell a little different. It might be with a K versus a CH, but it's called samak. And what a samak is, it means that it is a pause. It's used to give a pause. It's an aspect of all the teaching. Okay, so kind of like a bookshelf that has bookmarks or two bookends. This is what the Torah has in a scroll. There's these little marks that tell you when something is brand new or something's open or something's closed. Okay. So right here, this means a pause again, okay, called a stuma. Don't worry about the name, it's just a letter. So what you do is when you're looking for the correct teaching and understanding, you always got to go find the putuka, not the stuma. You got to look for the letter pei at the end. And here it is right here in verse number 12, which was of our last Torah portion, okay? Right here. So as you notice, that this is the book, this is what they call the pethak, which is to open. Okay, remember our word pethak? Pethach means to open. That's what it means. Okay. Like I told you on Shabbat, Pethach means to open, and actually they use it as a vowel, like a little dash like that. So they use it for the vowel point, and then the actual meaning means to open. Okay. And it's represented by this letter Pei. Excuse me. Yeah, letter Pei. Okay. That's what it looks like. Okay. So what this Pei represents is that I'm going to open a new teaching. So the Torah portion might begin in verse number 18 from the way they divided it, but the understanding, or some part of this understanding, has to do with the Feast of Tabernacles, which they would call Sukkot. Okay. Sukkot is a time of when there's an ingathering. All right. So what I would like to do, since it begins there, I want to show you something about this in particular, these next 5 verses that are included. Okay. It says this, and I'll read it in English for the sake of time. So chapter number, and you guys can, I want you to look for that when you're studying from the Bible Hub. I don't want you just to read what the Torah portion is. I want you to find out, is this the beginning of the teaching, or is this just part of the teaching? I want to know if it's the beginning or if it's part of it. So you always want to start from the beginning so you can get a full understanding. So according to what we learned just now, and what I'm bringing out is going to begin in chapter number 16, and it's going to be, here you go, if everything will cooperate, Deuteronomy chapter number 16, verse number 13 is that's the real beginning. Okay. That's the real beginning of this Torah portion. Okay. And it says this, you are to keep, meaning guard, the festival of Sukkot for 7 days, which is coming up for us in about a month. Okay. And after you gathered your produce of the threshing floor and your wine press, okay, rejoice at that festival, you, your sons, your daughters, your male and female slaves, your foreigners and orphans who are living, in the widows living among you. Okay. 7 days you are to keep this festival for Yahweh, your Elohim, in the place in which Yahweh, your Elohim, will choose, which we talked about last week. Talks about this place that Yah's talking about. We know that place is in the tribe of Yehuda, which is the city of Yerushalayim, because it says Yahweh, your Elohim, will bless you in all your crops and in all your work, so that you are going to be full of joy. Okay. 3 times a year, all of your men are to appear before Yahweh, your Elohim, in the place, the makom, in which Yahweh chooses, okay, or he will choose, at the festival of Matzah, the festival of Shavuot, and the festival of Sukkot. Those are the 3 festivals that it was mandatory for all the males to appear, and they were to show up before Yahweh and not to be empty-handed. They always had to have something in their hand. Why? Because these festivals have to do with what Yah has given to them through the land, right? So for Matzah, they had to bring an offering, of the minkai and the oxen and the sheep. And then the festival of Shavuot, they were bringing those first fruits to him. And the festival of Sukkot, it's a time of ingathering that you're supposed to bring. So everything that they were supposed to bring to Yahweh had to do with that which came out of the land and what their hands had worked for. That's why they don't supposed to come before Yahweh empty-handed. He says, but every man is to give what he can in accordance with the blessing Yahweh, your Elohim, has given you, as we've been talking about. That blessing is everything that comes out of the land, which is the fruits, the vegetables, the flour, the grain, the wine, all those different types of things, okay? What I picked up in the Hebrew language, which they don't show here in the English, is that when he says that you're supposed to come to show up with Yahweh, you're supposed to with Samakta, to rejoice before him. And he talks about all these different things, okay? And where do I want to say? Okay. Very important. This is about, I'm going to circle it right here. If you've been in my Hebrew class, I told you what this letter Kaf means. Can somebody tell me right now, what does it mean?
Open hand, palm.
It means you. Okay. I want you to look at this. Okay. I want you to really understand what's going on. Okay. So first line, he says the Chag of Sukkot, right? Which is the festival. You are you for you. That's what you are supposed to do for you. Okay. And when you have gathered, okay, from your threshing floor of your winepress, you shall rejoice in your festival. Okay. It's a festival that Yah has designed for the children of Israel. But once he revealed it to them, the festival became theirs. Okay. Bakageka. Okay. So the Bakag is the feast, but this is your festival now. It belongs to you. Just like the wine presses belong to you, which is that ka. So you learn a little Hebrew. Anytime you got this letter, which is a kaf on the end of, that's the name of the letter. They have it on the end of any noun is talking about you. Second person masculine singular. Okay. So I want you to pick up on how many times he says this. So now he says the festival is your festival. Okay. For you, your word that you learned from me at Ta, that's you. You're your son. Okay. Binka, Uvitaka, your daughter. Okay. Your, the Evatika, your servant, your male servant. Okay. You not only have a male servant that belongs to you, but also to you have a maid servant, which is the Ematika. See that ka right there? And the Halawayim. Okay. And the Wahagev. And the Wahayathom, which is the fatherless, and the Waha-almanah. The Lavayim, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow do not have the final kaf on the end, which kaf means you or yours. Okay. So the kaf on the end has to do with possessive, right? So we see here that Yah is letting us know that I'm going to tell you everything that belongs to you. Your sons belong to you. Your daughters belong to you. Your male servants belong to you. And your female servants belong to you. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 things that belong to you, or 4 types of people that belong to you. Yahweh's part is what belongs to him are the one, which the Lavim belongs to Yahweh. The stranger belongs to Yahweh. The fatherless belongs to Yahweh, and the widow belongs to Yahweh. See? You guys get where I'm coming from? So we have a responsibility to ourselves, but also to our sons, our daughters, and our male servants and our female servants. It's divided up. Okay? But the bottom line is Yah holds us responsible for all 8. All 8 of these individuals, you and I are responsible to make sure that they're taken care of. Okay. And this is the reason why this should have been, when they divided it up, I take occasion to how they did it, of course. You know, I don't consider myself to be a big time scholar, but what I didn't like is the fact that they started the Torah portion in verse number 18, when the actual putukah of the closing of, or the opening of the new understanding is found right here in Tabernacles. When it talked about going to this festival, he wants them to, and I'm going to erase all these different things. I just wanted to show you that the possessive is these things belong to you, the 4 things that belong to you, and the 4 things that belong to Yah, but you and I are responsible for all of it. Okay. Where's the word that he says you are to gather at your threshing floor and you shall rejoice at your feast? It belongs to you. Oh, here you go. Then he said this. This is what I wanted to show you. When he said that it was the Lewiim right here, and he said the stranger, and he's not talking about the Kohen in that sense. Okay. He's talking about the Levite, the Leviim, who don't have any possession. They don't have any land, which is the Kohanim are from that family. But I want you to see that he uses this word, a relative pronoun, which is telling you who he's talking about, right? Where, like who are within your gates. That's what I wanted to show you. That's why me reading to you this is important, because I want you to see that when you are to do this, It's everyone that's within your gates. And again, there's that cough right there again that tells you that it belongs to you, your bishareka. Okay. A sha'ar is what they call gates. Okay. And it's a shin, and it's an ayin, and a resh. Okay. Sha'ar. Here it is, sha'ar. There's another word called sha'ar, but it's a shin, an aleph, and a resh. Okay, they're both pronounced exactly the same. The difference is the aleph versus the ayin. Okay, so this one up here, the sha'ar is the gates. This sha'ar right here means a remnant, something left over. Okay, which in some cases Yah calls this either your is recognized as a wife, because she's a residue. Okay, she's the residue of what was left over of the spirit when Yah had breathed into man and man became a living soul. There was something that was left over. There was a residue left over. And then what he did is he breathed what was left over from the man and he breathed it into the woman. And this is the reason why the man and the woman should become one. And in that case, it's called a echad. Okay. So we see from the very inception of creation, Yah's oneness. Okay. He did not create, and this is interesting. I want you to understand this. I'm not picking on anybody. I'll use myself first. When the Most High created me and he breathed the breath of life into me and he knew who I was going to be, he already had chosen somebody that he wanted for me. And what he did was he took the residue of the one spirit that he had and gave that to my Isha, my wife. She is me. There is no, the two shall become one, and it's perfectly made. So the people, the individuals that you have been with or that you are with today, there's something about that oneness. Okay. You might ask yourself, what if you get married to someone else? Sometimes we join ourselves to people that we shouldn't be joined to. And other times we're joined to the person we're supposed to be. Right. And this is the reason why we're asking Yah, very importantly, to make sure that we look to his counsel to find the right person. And of course, a lot of us before, Yah's in charge. He's in charge of all the things that have ever happened to you and happened to us in our lives. And he's the one who designs it. But my point is that there's two words for sha'ar. So when you read the Hebrew, you'd be like, okay, that says sha'ar. Is that the same thing? Okay. And what these gates mean from this perspective is to split open. Okay. Like a gate. Okay. So when I first read the Torah this week, I was like, okay, why does this word keep popping up? Why is sha'areka, your gates? Why are your gates so important? And that's when he had me go back to verse number 13 to tell me the same gates that I'm bringing you into, which is in charge of your city. So every city and every community has to have a set of gates. And that gate is there to be closed or to be open and to make to split you off from everyone else. So now we see again, Yah is doing this separation and he wants to make it clear. He doesn't want this commingling, especially when he asks us to pull the trigger on certain cities. He would say you'd have to go in and you'd have to find out what's going on. And if you notice, and I think I'll look at it later on this week, where he talks about if you go to cause war to somewhere, you go to the way. I want you to go to the gates first. And then when you go to the gates, I want you to proclaim shalom to them first. You offer shalom before you go in and you do any damage. Before you go in and you kill anybody, before you go to war, Yah says, I want you to offer shalom. But here I want to be clear. The shalom that he's offering is not to the 7 nations that he's sending them in there to go kill and destroy. Okay. These 7 nations, which are the Canaanites, he's not telling them to offer them shalom. He's talking about any surrounding communities that are around them, like, a little bit distance away from them. He says, any other nation besides these 7, if you have to go in there and handle business, the first thing you do is you offer them shalom. And if they reject the shalom, then you go in there and you kill everybody I tell you to kill and you get rid of them. Okay. That's what it is. And I'll show you some text on that later. But there is no shalom for these nations that worship these other Elohim. Somebody tell me, why does Yah want us to get rid of the gods of these people? Why does he want to get rid of these gods? What were the gods causing the people to do?
Commit idolatry.
Huh?
Commit idolatry.
They're committing idolatry, but what were the gods causing the people to do? Name some of the things that the gods were having these occupants do. More specifically,
Praise
Kill
them
their
instead of
children,
praising God.
sacrifice their children.
they were burning and sacrificing their children.
Mhm.
And their gods allowed them to do that. That's what their God required of them. And he says, it's never entered my mind. I don't want you to do such a thing. Their gods also, too, was instrumental in their worship of the sun, the moon, and the stars. Okay. And also, too, not only that, but their gods had a lot of things that had to do with their sexual conduct. Okay. So they were having sex with each other. They were having sex with animals. They were having sex with anything they could. Okay. They were violating everyone's rights, literally. Okay. So there was a lot of different things. They were eating unclean foods. They had a lot of practices, and Yah calls those practices disgusting. Okay. And he loathes those things. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. However, what's important here is I don't want you to forget about these gates, the Bishareka. Okay. Somebody tell me, since you and I are not in the land of Canaan, why would Yah want to tell us about gates? Why would he want to tell us about something that opens and closes?
Your gates can be your eyes, your mouth.
There you go. There's your eye gate. There's your mouth gate. There's your ear gate. Okay. There's your gates. You understand? You have these gates and you have to protect them. Okay. And also, too, you have a gate for men, and women have a gate. You got a gate. You understand? You got a gate that if you allow somebody to enter that gate, okay, they're coming into your city, they're coming into your dominion, they're coming into your residence. Okay. So there's several gates, but the bottom line is Yah says, I want you to guard your gates. Okay. Because if you guard your gates and you protect yourself, then after anybody that's within inside those gates, okay, more specifically a city, you will be able to come before me and celebrate the way that you ought to be celebrating before me. Okay. And what I'm interested in is making sure that everything within the gates is set apart and kadosh, which that's the reason why you will find us talking more about these gates. Okay, so it's not just about the judges, the shaftim, and the officers, because I'm going to read now. When I read 18, now it's going to make sense because you'll be like, okay, I get it now. So that's the reason why it should have been started over in verse number 13, because it mentions these gates. Okay, and then he says these are the 7 days of the sacred feast to Yahweh, the Eloheka, in the Bakom, in which he chooses, which goes back to what we talked about last week. Why? Because Yahweh wants to bless you. Listen to this. That Ka again is bless you. Okay. Your Elohim, which is possessive. Yah wants you to know that not only is the things that he bless you belong to you, but he himself belongs to you too. And you to him. It is a relationship. He even says your produce. There's a Ka right there. So if you look at all these Kas that he says, but based on your hand, your Yadika, okay, your hands, so that the reason why this is a Ta versus a Ka is because this is a verb, okay? Verbs usually have a Ta on the end, okay? Nouns have a Kaf on the end. If you're in my class, you know that. So that you can rejoice. Yah's ultimate goal, as I mentioned last week, was about us to go through what they call Sameach. And that is to rejoice. And the place where he intends for them to rejoice is inside their gates, in everything within their gates. So their produce, their sons, their daughters, and all the works of their Yadakah. He said 3, then we've already read that. I'm not going to go over that. Now we're going to go to verse number 18 now. Now listen to this. So in 17, you see that it stops with this little sumak right here. So the Pethach is to open, okay? That's what it's called. It's called a pathak. Okay, that's the symbol, because what Pethach, the symbol right here, is a mouth. That's what a pay is in Hebrew. It's a mouth. Okay, it's a mouth, and it means it's open. Okay, so that's why they're using it. Okay, open. The semak is like a snake. Okay, and it's like a snake this wrapped around, which encloses. Okay, it's enclosed. So it wraps around and it's enclosed. So what is this saying here? This is saying that now the teaching is this aspect, this idea that surrounds the your gates, about this part of your gates, about your festivals and stuff like that, in the place that I told you, that right there, that idea and that concept, now we're going to close that off. Okay, that aspect from it, right? We're just going to leave it right there. Now I'm going to tell you something else about your gates. So he begins by saying judges and shotarim, which are officers like sheriffs. Okay, so shotim and washotarim, you are to appoint, meaning you are to appoint to you in all of your gates, your sha'areka. Now, do you guys see the connection? Okay. It's going to be another stuma at the end of this, and we'll find it in a second. Okay. So the way it works is, in the Hebrew, it works in the scroll where you'll have a petukah, which is a pethach, and then it'll have a stuma, and then have a stuma, and then it'll have a stuma. I don't know how many stumas it may have. And then at the end of that whole conversation, they'll do one last petukah and says, okay, now we're open to something else. So everything from this point right here to this point right here is like a bookmark. Those are the two book ends. Those are your ends. And everything in here is your conversation. Any questions about that? You say, well, why am I learning this? You're learning this because if you want to get the proper understanding, and it's not too hard, it just takes practice. Okay, I'm not trying to go over anybody's head, because no matter how you look at it, a pethach is still a pay, which has to open your mouth. Okay, and it has something to do with you. Okay, and again, when you look at the pethach, and it means open. Okay, it's called a pethach. It means open. So what is y'all trying to open? And it's open what? That's a part of the mouth. Okay? It's an opening of the mouth. Why? Why do I need to open your mouth? Because if you open your mouth, then Yah is going to feed you. This is what he's doing with us. He's leading us to places where he wants us to go. And there's certain times where you and I need to pause. That's what that stumaya right here is. It's a pause. That's what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to pause, and you're supposed to take some time to think about what you just read. That's all he's saying. At the end of you reading all this about your sons and your daughters and your slaves and your male slaves, your female slaves and your lavaim and your widows and your fatherless and all these things, I want you to take some time and ruminate on why I just said what I said. You got to play it out. You got to put yourself in that position. You have to see yourself with sons and daughters. You have to see yourself with slaves, male and female. You have to see yourself with a group of people called the Lawiim. You have to see yourselves with the fatherless and the widow. You have to see yourself as a community. And if you're not reading the Torah with a community-based mind, this is not going to work for you. If you believe that you're blessed outside of Israel, then you're confused. You're out of your mind. That's just what it is. You're literally gone. I'm just telling you the truth. I know it sounds harsh, but it's the truth. If we're not thinking about one another, we're not thinking about Jerusalem or Yerushalayim, and we're not thinking about coming together as a people, we're not thinking about the rest of the tribes, and we're not thinking about one another, you and I are confused. And we don't understand Yah's ways. Every king and every judge is going to be picked for the purpose of the people. And whoever you pick determines what the outcomes are going to be for the nation. So when we talk about judges and justice, and we're talking about within this Torah portion, you're going to find out about what a king's supposed to do. You're going to find out who these judges are. You're going to find out what the Kohanim, with their responsibility. You're going to find out who's supposed to be doing what, but you're only going to find that out in your gates. So now he's telling us in your gates, I need you to appoint you, individual, okay? You, second person masculine singular, you have what they will call a voice in choosing your officers and your judges. Often you and I are given officers and judges that you and I never chose. We never pick some of these people. And if you don't vote, of course, you never have any say, but even if you do, there's some bribery going on and some favors being done. But besides all that, in our community, you and I get to pick our own judges and we get to pick our own officers. And that's what makes us different. And this is why we're having the problems that we're having in this nation, because we didn't have an opportunity to pick. Could you imagine what our communities would be like if our officers and our judges were the people that we as a people picked for our community? Could you imagine the organization? Could you imagine the power that one would have? Could you imagine would there be any discipline problems? Would there be any issues where your kid's not listening to you? If you got issues today, you got to go to your oppressor and ask them to, you don't really have a voice. They already have a voice for you. And the voice is their laws and their commandments and their statutes that they have and their decrees that they have, which are unjust. Okay. So Yah is letting us know that when you come to your community and in your gates, which Yahweh Elohim is going to give to you, he's no thing, which is he's giving. Okay. It's not a one-time offer right here. This no thing, like the word Nathan, like Nathan, that means to give. So the word Nathan, the name means to give, and Nothan, Nothan, means the same thing, but it means giving. I'm giving this to you currently, presently. Okay, telaka, to you. Shepherd staff to you, to guide you. What? According to your tribes. So every tribe in every community, they had to go ahead and pick their own officers and their judges. Okay, the word shoftim, okay, comes from the word shafat. Okay, shoftim is judges, okay, the ones who are judging, and a shafat is a judge. But if I put a M-I-S, or I take, not mishpat, right here. Mishpat team. Mishpatim is Yahweh's rulings. Okay. So you got mishpatim, which are rulings. Okay. And regulations, how things are supposed to happen, which Yah has already laid out for the Shaftim. So the Shaftim they're not going to be making up their own rules and their own regulations. What they would do is go to the Torah to be their mishpatim. Yah has already outlined what his rulings are in situations. Okay. Somebody tell me, since you read your Torah portion, me and you get into it, and the judges of our city can't figure it out. What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do if the decision's too difficult and they're having a controversy? What are they supposed to do?
I think bring it to the.
Yes, both of you are absolutely correct. They're supposed to bring it to the Kohanim, and the Kohanim is back at that place called the what? The Makom. The Makom is the place that Yahweh will choose, that he has chosen for his name to be there. He goes to that place where his name is. Okay, when they got to that place and there was a decision that had to be made, what would happen to the individual who went against that decision?
Put to death.
They got put to death. They got killed. Okay, they got killed because they went to the place. They went to the Makom. They went to the place where Yahweh's name, the Yod He, the Wah-He, is in that place. And they went there to go get a decision, okay? To be a decision made by Yahweh. It's not the Kohanim, okay? The Kohen. Did I spell that right? No. It's not the Kohen's decision. It's Yahweh's decision. The Kohen is just a representative on behalf of Yahweh in order to make that decision. Okay, so the decisions are being made. Those decisions we can see can be made inside of your gates. That's the first place they're supposed to be made. Okay, I stand corrected. Within your gates, you have what? Within the gates, you have communities. Okay, so it's a city, but inside the city, it's not just one, everyone's together. You have certain pockets of different communities within there. You have families who are sticking close to each other and doing their thing. So you got homes, okay, or what they call dwellings. Just call it a home or a tent or a dwelling. It's the same identical thing. Household, doesn't matter. So that's a place that decisions are going to be made, correct? Okay. But even before you get to the home, the decision has to begin with what? Or who? You. This is where it happens. This is where it happens. The first decision that you have to worry about is the one that's within your gates, within your head, your mind. Your mind is the place that you need to put some judges and some officers first. A lot of us don't even know that we're supposed to have judges and officers at our gates. You can appoint, listen to me carefully, you can appoint judges and officers over oneself and over what you decide you're not going to hear anymore. You need to have some kind of self-awareness about what it is that you're looking at and who you're listening to. This week's Torah portion, okay, I think I'm going to just take the next few minutes to talk about that. Praise Yahweh, okay? The first individual, okay, that you and I have to worry about is us, and then it goes into your home, okay? And then it goes outside of your home into the community, okay? And then it goes from the community, it goes to the city. Then it goes to the city throughout the whole entire tribe in that land, that parcel of land. Then it goes from there to whole entire Israel. So it's just different layers upon layers. I want to end your study tonight with this, which you can find in chapter number 1 of the book of Psalms. Very important. Your Psalms line up with these things. And listen what it says. It says this: how blessed are those who reject the advice of the wicked, the Rashayim, and don't stand, forgive the ad, don't stand on the way of sinners. So they reject the advice of the wicked, and we know a person's wicked who doesn't follow the Torah. We also know that you don't stand on the way of sinners, meaning you're not on their path, you're on a whole other path. You don't stand with them, you don't sit with them, and you don't take any advice from them. You understand? You don't sit with them and converse about problems that you're having, that you need to talk to someone who has the Torah. Verse number 2. It's only 6 verses, I think. Yes, it is. Their delight, what they, kafetz or kafetzka, that they delight in, which they take pleasure in, they take pleasure in Yahweh's Torah. That's where they get their advice. That's where they get their counsel from. And on his Torah, they meditate day and night. It starts with you and I. That's what he's trying to tell us through this Torah portion at the beginning of this week. And what would these individuals be like? They're going to be like trees. That's what you'll be like. You'll be like a tree that's planted by streams of water. I want you to close your mind and your eyes, and I need you to think about you being a tree planted by streams, by waters, flowing streams, Like the beautiful ones that you see in some of the places that you've driven by and said, wow, that looks so pretty. Look at those streams just going all the way through that valley. These individuals that delight in Yahweh's Torah are going to bear fruit in season. But in the Hebrew, it says not in season, but in its season. There's different seasons that you and I are going to have. Sometimes you're going to have fruit and others you're not. Sometimes you're going to go through a phase where your leaf is just there. It's never going to wither. It's always staying green. Why? Because you're next to the streams of water. The person who's delighting themselves in the Torah is the person who's like a tree that's delighting itself in the streams of water that is always available for them so they can sustain and keep their growth and keep their development and stay alive. Everything that you're going to do, what they call it, yatzliach, meaning you're going to succeed. You're going to prosper in everything that you do. Everything that you do, you're going to have great success because you're planted like a tree by the streams of water, meaning the Torah. But it's not so for the wicked. The wicked are not like this. Not at all. They're not like this. And the reason why they're not like this is because the wicked are the ones who don't seek the counsel of the Torah. The advice is listen, what I'm about to show to you right quick after I read this. Advice in Hebrew is called Eitzah. Okay. Let me see. I'll just move that. I'm sorry. A tree in Hebrew, like the advice right here, is called Eitzah. Okay. And Eitzah comes from, and that means counsel or advice. Okay. You and I, and eights should have been a TZ, excuse me. Eights has to do with wood. Okay, and that's like from, and an eitzim is a tree, because that's where wood comes from, a tree. So David is using metaphoric language, and he's letting you know that the counsel, the counsel that you want to be is you want to be the one who is planted by streams of water. So you can always have your fruit in its season. But these wicked ones, the wicked advice of the wicked, and the ones who are sinners, and the ones who scoff and make fun of and don't want to listen, those individuals, they're not like that. They're going to be like the chaff. They're the waste that's left over. They're good for nothing. They are literally worthless. They have less worth, and it means absolutely nothing. And it's supposed to be driven by the wind. That which is planted is firm. Being planted means that you have what they would call, in the Hebrew, called a kun. Okay? And a planted, okay, is a kun. And a kun is a foundation. And a foundation is supposed to make you firm. This is where you get your word kahuna or kahune, which has to do with the kohen, which is the priest. You understand? That's why we need a priest in the community, because they're the firm and they're straight up. They're righteous. You understand? So this is the deal. But the wicked, they're like the chaff. They're supposed to be blown by the wind. And for this reason, the wicked won't stand. They're not going to stand like a tree to the judgment. They're not going to be able to endure it. Nor will the sinners at the gathering of the righteous. Okay? So there's a complete distinction and a difference made between those who are wicked and those who are righteous. They won't stand. They won't be able to stand up to the judgment. And the reason why they're not able to stand is because they didn't delight in the Torah. That's the reason why. For Yahweh watches over the way of the righteous. But the wicked, the way of the wicked, is doomed. They don't have a chance. I don't care how much we love to talk about, oh, there's some good people out here. And more specifically, if Yah's been the judgment of Yah begins with his people, because those are the ones that he gave his Torah to. You understand? So the Torah is very important for you and I. I'm not going to overdo your brain tonight. I just want you to know that you got to take the time to make up your mind and make a decision. And number one, let's begin this journey this week on taking a pause, like we have from the last time we read. He says, pause for a minute, and I need you to think about what you just read. So go back and read verse 13 down to 17, like we supposed to last week, but we didn't understand it. We're supposed to make a pause. Now, this pause right here, this stuma right here, this pause, and it's part of the teaching, the stuma, okay, is something too. It's the first letter in the word samak. The samak is the first letter. And samak in the Hebrew means to what? To rejoice. Okay. And of course, we know that rejoicing, and he told us that when you get to the time of Sukkot that's coming upon us, you're supposed to say mak. But also to take, you got to pause. To rejoice, you got to take your time. I read something today said, don't try to, achieve wealth by continually working all the time. Sometimes you need to take a break and pause and enjoy that which you have right now. This pause is here, listen to me, in verse number 17, not because there's a division between 17 and 18. 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, and 18 go together. But after 17, he says, I want you to take a pause. And I need you to ruminate on that for a minute. And then before you go into the Shaftim, because what I'm going to tell you about Shaftim, it has to do with the very gates that I told you that I want to bring you to so you can rejoice. Now I'm going to tell you, if you don't have the judges and the officers at these gates, then guess what's going to happen? You will not be able to rejoice. You won't be able to rejoice because you're going to have so much confusion, so much arguments, so much controversy, so much disruption, so many distractions going on in your life. You and I don't have judges and officers outside of ourselves today. You have to become your own Shaftim today. That's why it was written for us. It's people say that this doesn't apply. This is why the New Testament is why we need that. So we could have a whole bunch of tent makers and doctors and so-called lawyers and all these other people telling you things that they just wrote, and it's all anonymous. You have to appoint your judges and your officers in your gates. And you got to do that this week. You're not going to read this Torah portion and go on and thinking you had a religious experience. You're not looking at this from just an academic way, scholarship. That's important. But this is about us making appointments. And the thing about it is that you and I need to give ourselves, because this word is not only appoint, but it means to give. Nathan means to give and to set in place. You need to set this in place, and you need to give yourself a chance. That's what he's talking about. You understand? And if you look, and you even look what I'm saying, just to prove it, let's prove what I'm saying. 54:14, right here, a point. 54:14 gives. Well, the letters look different. Same root is to give. You got to give yourself a chance. And you only give yourself that chance through Yahweh your Eloheka. And you have to do it the manner that he told you. Because these judges and these officers are not going to make judgments based upon how they feel, their emotions, or nothing. Okay? They're going to be according to the tribes, and they will shaftu, and these individuals will judge the people with just judgment, the zedek that we went over before, talking about righteous. Sadiq, right here, zedek, the mishpat is just and it's righteous, and that justice and that righteousness comes only from the Torah. That's what Yah is telling us. Our ancestors were so excited about going to the land that they were going to go profane. That's what they were excited about. See, for them, this was something that Moshe told them right before they were going in. Okay. But for those of you who love the New Testament, and I'm talking about those live online, because I know nobody in this class loves the New Testament, but I want to share something with you. Just one line. It says this: Acts and the Gospel of Luke make up a two-part work called Luke Acts by the same anonymous author. That's all I want to tell you. That's all I want to tell you. It's an anonymous author. The Acts of the Apostles, I can't help myself, was given its name, okay, by this guy called Irenaeus. I don't want to go too deep tonight, but Irenaeus. He's the one who came up with this idea of the Acts of the Apostles. The book of Luke, the Gospel of Luke, and the book of Acts, that gives you all the different accounts. Like the book of Acts is the 5th book in the New Testament. They're trying to emulate and match the history and the narrative that was given to us in our 5th book, which is Davarim. They're trying to give you an account to tell you, well, our 5th book tells us about everything that they did. Davarim is telling you everything that they did and instructing them on how they should live and what they should do. And so in the book of Acts, we'll go through it later on this week, they went ahead and started appointing judges and leaders over those places that they went. We're going to go there this week. We might go there on either Shabbat or Yom Kamishi. So what am I saying? What I'm saying to you all is that Yah loves us and that he wants us to see these things from Re'eh. That's what we learned last week, Re'eh. The pause that you saw in the Torah teaching was a pause to ruminate and get prepared to receive what he's about to tell you. So I'm going to feed you something else now. Now I got another stuma. This stuma, during the next one where you see the stuma, you're going to be able to feed. And after we finish feeding off that stuma, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about again, there's nothing wrong with going over things over and over and over again. So we see here at the end of verse number 17, I got just 1 minute. Right there, there's a stuma. That means a pause. And it means that you're going to pause, but you're going to continue. So this right here is verse number 18 is the beginning of continuing another stuma. Okay, so there's a stuma right there. And if we scroll down in verse number 18, we didn't read 19, but I'm just going to show you. Let's scroll down to where we see the stuma. Somebody tell me when you see it. It's always at the end. Do you see it right there in verse 20?
Yes.
Okay, so it's right there in verse 20. And up here, it's in verse number 17. See? So when you go to Bible Hub, you'll be like, okay, I'm looking for these things. That just means pause and take in what I just said. So we go all the way back up here. This is just go train your little eyes so you can understand what I'm saying. That right there is a putuka. That means it's open for a new teaching. This is the end of everything up here. This is it right here. It stops right there. And this means I'm going to open to this now. I'm opening this teaching now. Okay. So there's a beginning and there's an end. Okay. Right. So this had just stopped and this is open. So now this is your new beginning. Within your new beginning, you have what they would call the stumas, which we've been seeing. Okay. So verse 13 is the beginning. So we read that. Then I read 14. Okay, great. I read 15. Then I read 16. And then I read 17. And then 17 told me, okay, boom, pause. Pause and think and ruminate, meditate, pray. 18 says, now you can go now. Just like you're a sheep. You stay one spot, you eat, and then you pause for a second. You ever seen a sheep or a bull or any cattle eat and be eating, and all of a sudden they stop and they look around? Have you ever seen that? Come on, somebody. You guys ever see that?
No.
Ah, okay. Well, I live by cows and they eat and then they stop. Okay. And then, so then you go to 18 and then you go 19. And 19, I read 20 and I go all over 20 and then boom, I stop. I'm gonna chomp on that. I'll eat on that for a minute and think about things. Then I'm gonna go here to 21, and I'll be like, okay, boom, look at the 21. It stopped at 21. What? Look, it's different. You guys see this? It stops here in 21, and then immediately after 22, there's one. So I need you to pause right here. Then I need you to take another pause right here. After you read this, he said, after you read, not you shall plant for yourself a wooden tree near the altar of Yahweh Elohim, which you shall build for yourself. Pause. Pause, 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 pause. And then you go here and don't set up any pillars that Yahweh hates. Then pause again. Think about what he's saying. All right. And of course, they didn't have this, but in their conversation, when they were with Moshe, it was a pause. 17 has a stuma after one. Read one verse and pause. So you got to ask yourself, what are all these pauses here for? Because they're very important. Okay, then you're going to continue on and continue on and continue. And there's not a new pause for a while. Look, it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. There hasn't been another pause or a stuma. Boom. That's the end of it. That's the end of that teaching. Everything from 13 all the way down to verse number 7 of 17 is one compact teaching. Here you go. Chapter 16, verse number 13, they have a putukah. Then they had a stuma, 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 then they had a stuma. And then they got right here in chapter number 17, verse number 7, they got another putukah. From this 13 to 17 is all, and these are different aspects of what Yah is trying to get you to see. So for example, if I'm talking about massage, I'll say it because I used to own a massage business. There's a lot of things I want to tell you about massage. First thing I want to tell you about the massage, the first stuma we're going to go over today is the client. The second thing we're going to talk about is the equipment. The next thing we're going to talk about, all has to do with massage. Next thing we're going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the lotions. Then we're going to talk about the appointments. And then we're going to talk about, safety. See what I'm saying? So I can give you all these different stumas but from this point all the way down here, I'm still talking about nothing but massage. I want you to get a message about this with all of its different aspects and different areas. Does that make sense? You can put any topic in there. You can put a brake job. Well, tell me about the brakes. Oh, well, some are, the disc brakes. And I'm going to tell you about the power brakes. And I'm going to tell you about the brake fluid. And I'm going to tell you about how long it'll last. And I'll tell you about the distances. And so that's what Yah is doing in the Torah. Yah's not having us just read it to just be reading it and then magically help and ask, well, what is it I supposed to know? Well, you and I have a responsibility to take our time to pause when he tells us how to pause. And this is something that you and I have never been taught and never understood. And this is one of the main reasons why our people today are very ignorant of what Yahweh has said, because they will not take the time to read it. And it's important, as you can see. Okay. So after you read that, and then you go into 17, you're in chapter number 17 and verse number 7. Wow, 17 and 7 ended, and it's opening up for another thing now. So now he's moving away from all the different things, and now he's talking about the courts. You see? He's going to tell you about the court system, and he's going to tell you how that's supposed to go. Okay? So that's what your Torah is about. That's why I'm excited to be your instructor and your teacher, is because I'm supposed to teach you how to look and to learn about the Torah. That's the name of my channel, Absolute Knowledge. So if you don't know, I'm not faking my name. I want to know. I want absolute knowledge of the Torah. I don't want to be dumb. I don't want not to know what's going on. You understand? Especially when you're talking about my life. And not only my life in, the hereafter. No, I'm talking about my life right now today. Yah wants you to have the best life that you're supposed to have right now today. Today could have been your last day. It can too still be your last day. Did you live the way that you wanted to live? Did you eat what you wanted to eat? Did you have the relationships that you want? Did you accomplish what you want to accomplish? Are you happy? Are you satisfied? This is it. This is what the Christians don't want. They don't want you to focus on right now. Because if you focus on right now, you wouldn't have any time for any nonsense and no distractions. Yah is trying to give you and I an opportunity to have the best life possible, even in your exile. You find comfort in Yah's Torah, even in exile. You don't have to wait to go to the land and do right. That's a lie. It's a fallacy. This is the truth right now. This is what we're in. You guys know I can talk. I need to shut up because I can go all night. You hear me? I can, because it's just what I want to do. But I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for Yom Kamishi. Hallelujah. Any remarks from my family, my mishpachah? Any questions that you may have about what we learned tonight, about the stuma, the putuka? You know, the stuma is to take a pause. It looks like a little S, a little circle. The putuka is the letter pay, meaning open for mouth. Means open your mouth. Let me feed you. I'm going to give you something different now. I'm going to talk about something totally different. Okay. And then the stuma is just give you the different aspects of the same theme. We're just going to deal with this right quick, and then we're going to move on to something else. So 2 bookmarkers at the end of, your bookcase, 1 book thing here, and here's another one. You put them together, bookends, and then you have the content, which is in between both of them. Okay. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise be to the living Elohim. May Yahweh bless you. Is there anyone who wants to say anything before we go? Any remarks?
So the Summa and the Samek are 2 different things?
I use those words interchangeably. So let's just say this. So the stuma is what they would call it, and that means to close. Okay, that's what it means. It means to close. Okay, and they usually, I think it's STUMAH, stuma. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like. Okay, and of course they don't want to show you. So, well, where'd you get that? Did you make this up? No, I didn't. Let's just go right here. That's my book, Antique. There's a lot of stuff in there. So what you do is you go to, can you guys see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Stuma. So stuma, all right. And I'm gonna go Hebrew. Hebrew. See, these are words that I think sometimes that they don't really have. What is it? No, that's not it. That's a bit text. Maybe I'm spelling it wrong. Let me see. Hebrew. What was that? Meaning of stoma. No. I don't know if I got the word correct. That's how I'm spelling it. Suma. Let me go. Oh, here you go. Let's see. Is it punctuation? No. They use those functions. Punctuation. No, that's on my calf and all that kind of stuff. I got to get back to you. I had it somewhere, but I don't know if I'm not just spelling it right, but it's about the divisions. So almost you put in there divisions of Torah. What's wrong with my hands? All right, so the Hebrew people of the book, what are the divisions? Okay, they're just doing basic stuff right there about, okay, they got the division that way. Yeah, I gotta, let's see if it's in this part of Parashah. Oh, that might be, oh yeah, it's right. Okay, so just the way I spelled it. Okay, so here we go, spacing techniques. Okay, So this is under, you can read it for yourself. It's right here under what we just put in for the parashah, okay, the Torah. Parashah, okay? That means Torah portion. Within the Torah portion, they tell you the purpose, they tell you the history, and of course, you got to look at it from your eyes of being a Hebrew Israelite. It says in most modern Torah scrolls, okay, and in Jewish editions of the Bible, there are two types of parashot. You got the open portion, which is the parashah putukah. They got an H there, but it's really a CH, and a closed portion, which is called they call it setuma. Okay, setuma. So the setuma and the putukah. Okay, this petukah, they got an H there, but it's really a CH. Putukah and the setuma, which is the close, like I stated. So an open portion is roughly similar to the modern paragraph, and it goes on to tell you about how it's divided and so forth and so on. All right, and then it goes here again. It says in some manuscripts and in some printed editions, very important point that I want to bring out is this idea right here that tells you that the open portion is a pituka, is abbreviated with the letter pei. Okay, it's the pei. That's right here. Okay, that means the mouth. They don't tell you that there, but that's what it means. A closed portion, which is a setuma. Okay, which is the letter sumak. Okay, and it's often in place of a visual gap in the line. So it's not only that, and they're represented by a P for the pei and the S for the stuma, all right, or the samak. So it's letting you know that's how they're spacing it. Okay, so they give you the definitions of the word, here like pei, and they tell you it's closed portion. They don't go into what's the purpose though. They don't tell you that part. Okay. For whatever reason, they're just giving you this is a basic article to tell you what these things are named and where they're at. Okay. So in my studies, and also I think it was some other, I forgot exactly where I learned it, but in my studies is letting you know that, you have these markings, but also too, if you don't have the stuma or the putuka, it'd be right here in the scroll. And the scroll gives these spaces that tells you that it's a putuka or stuma, and it depends on how big the space is. Okay, so this right here would probably be the stuma. Okay, this one right here, the space is super long and there's nothing after it. That right there is going to be the putuka. The space.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so when you got the smaller, when it's a small space, it's just again a pause. And just as a pause is a close of that in particular aspect of the teaching. When you go to the putuka, it's like, okay, now we're closed from this, and now we're opening to another discussion about something different. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the importance, you guys, is to find out why are these spaces here and how to use them. I don't want you to be reading and not understand. Reading, that's what I don't like about English, because they don't put any of these spaces here. You just be reading. You might think something has something to do with, for example, in the book of Daniel. Somebody read chapter number 12 and be like, oh, that's resurrection. That's Michael telling us this and this and that. Well, if you go and you look at what I'm saying, go back and you will not find a putuka until you get back to chapter number 10. That's where it begins. So if you want the full context of what's going on in chapter number 12, in that particular part of the scroll, you got to go read chapter number 10. You can't divide it. And that's where this confusion's coming. Because a lot of times people are taking stuff, and this is the danger. I'll let you go. They're taking parts and pieces, and then they're putting it all together. So they'll take a scripture here, and they'll put another one here, and they'll put another, and then try to match it all up. And what they're doing is they're taking out of context. What it meant in this in particular part of the scroll would not mean something over here. You can't take that. It doesn't even go along with it. That's confusion. Did you guys see that now?
Yes.
So somebody's going to play I dare. I dare someone to play with me. Well, I don't get any fights anymore, but yeah. Yeah, exactly, Mark. I did. I talked about that concept in Isaiah 53. They think that Isaiah 53 starts in chapter 53, verse 1. It doesn't. It starts in 52. I believe verse number 9 or 13, one of those. So if you know where it starts and where it ends, you'd be like, okay, this is all part of it. That's all easy. Anyway, I'll see you guys on Yom Kamishi. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Wow.
Living Elohim. You guys have a good evening, and I'll see you if the Creator is willing. Hallelujah.
Lala Tov.
Shalom.
Let's tell everyone.